Hi, this is Zappy, and you've got Warren Gumpel, both of us from the Mind Army. And the reason we wanted to speak with everybody today has a lot to do with activism. And I think, Warren and I, our Mind Army is fighting for the right to pursue happiness. And we really believe that it's everybody's inalienable right to pursue that happiness any way that they need to. And right now, as we're coming out of this pandemic with all kinds of PTSD, and we're going through this, what we call the SAD epidemic, suicide, addiction, depression. This is a really, intense time where we need access to all the tools that nature has available. And as much as I love cannabis and have been using it for over 30 years, it's part of my lifestyle and I cherish it. We're in a moment where working with cannabis alone is not going to triage the crippling crises that we're in right now. And this is where we think psychedelics play a really important role, because if we can use these compounds to break addiction, to break depression, this is what these compounds were made for. And for me, it feels like nature is very intelligent, and it's been bringing out cannabis, to get everybody comfortable, with plants and herbs and things like that. And we have, all these, older people who never would have tried cannabis before. Now they understand that, hey, it's not a drug, this is medicine. And so as nature brings out psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca and iboga, these really powerful compounds to deal with this depression and this addiction crisis that we're going through, it feels like cannabis has kind of led the way. And that's a really important role that cannabis played. But, if somebody's suicidal, if somebody's, really suffering, you can't just say, hey, sit down, smoke a joint, it's going to be okay. I mean, that might work for some people. That might, help in the lifestyle going forward. But, as far as triaging this crisis right now, we really need psychedelics. And the people who are in the cannabis community, the one thing that maybe we should have done more of is to be more radical, and the opportunity to just basically, like we're doing with the Mind Army, where we're saying we want the president to write an executive order right now for this epidemic. We are not going to sit here and talk to the state government and the local government, the FDA and DEA. We don't have time. We're in a crisis, and we have to get really radical. And the psychedelic community is large, and we do have the best product in the world, but we really need the support of the cannabis community. And I know a lot of the folks there, have pushed really hard, but we have to get radical. I mean, here in Florida, 60+% of the people voted for medical marijuana years ago, and some of that stuff has never even been rolled out. Hemp and CBD, some of these things aren't even available years and years later, even though 60% of the voters said they wanted it. So that's not acceptable. We don't want to talk to anybody else. We want to talk to the president, who can write the executive order and make these things legal right now during this crisis. And we are, telling Donald Trump that if he is elected president again, that this has to be one of the first things that he does in order to combat the opiate epidemic, the suicide crisis, the PTSD from coronavirus. And he will win the Nobel Prize for bringing down suicide rates in veterans and making a dent in the opiate epidemic. So if it's Joe Biden, we intend to tell him that his son, Hunter Biden, who suffered a drug and alcohol addiction, overcame it using iboga, that if it's good enough for his son to use plant medicine to overcome that, it's good enough for the rest of it. And he needs to get his pen out and sign an executive order right now. We're not waiting around. We don't care to talk to anybody except the president of the United States, because we're literally living in a very scary sci-fi movie. And the triage, the antidote for this is psychedelics, and the lifestyle of psilocybin microdosing, using cannabis as a medicine. This is how people are going to get their brains reconnected to the true reality, which is there's tons of abundance and there's all kinds of opportunities for healing that we all have in front of us right now. So we have to get radical. In 2017, just after the inauguration of Donald Trump, I put a full-page ad in the New York Times asking the president to make the opiate epidemic a first 100-day issue. And I had to explain what ketamine's being used for, the science on it, and what iboga is being used for with addiction and the science. And because I think right now, it's not that there's a conspiracy to keep these compounds away from people. It's really just a lack of education. And if we could get the cannabis community to fall in here behind the psychedelic community, it's just going to make everything that much easier. It seems like psychedelics, because of the crisis, may get legal in the United States even before cannabis does. But I think that has to do with the crisis that we're in and the fact that the psychedelic community has started to get much more aggressive, much more radical, because that's what this time presents. So I want to turn it over to Warren Gumpel on his thoughts, because him and I have been putting a movie together with Lamar Odom that's going to come out early next year, where we gave him ketamine treatments. We gave him an iboga treatment. Unfortunately, we had to take him down to Mexico because iboga is illegal here, but he had a total transformation. And in making that happen, we are putting together something, an opportunity for people to tap into ketamine, to triage them, to tap into these other psychedelics. So that when the movie comes out, we haven't just told people what the solution is, but we've actually given them some ways to access these compounds. And so, Warren, if you want to pile on there.
Yeah, thanks for the quick turnover. Yes, I mean, really passionate right now about these plant medicines and psychedelics and ketamine, which we do have available now, and think it's a great triage. But I think very importantly, from my own observation and some of the things that have been studied pretty comprehensively from doctors at the greatest universities in the United States and other doctors in America, I think ibogaine, which President Biden's son used to help himself with addiction. You know, Zappy and I have had the honor to be able to help treat a lot of people with ibogaine, but they have two things in common, which are they're sick and they need it. Either they're opioid addicts or heroin addicts, but also they're rich and they can go down to Mexico and they can afford to spend $10,000 to get a treatment. And even when you do that, it's not regulated. The range of care is very disparate. You know, some people have excellent facilities in place, excellent doctors that know how to administer the medicine, and some people run into places where they're just not getting it done right. We want it here available in the United States. We're in the middle of an opioid epidemic. It works. It's been studied. It can work better for more people if it was available here right now. There's just nothing working to curb this epidemic. It's affecting families across every socioeconomic demographic. I've lost a lot of people to overdoses. I've had a lot of it in my sphere. It's been horrible. It's especially been horrible knowing that there's a solution that should be available, and for one reason or another, it's just not available right now. So, you know, our job, especially people coming from cannabis that have, you know, helped to usher in this, something that was impossible to think about 10 years ago, you know, sitting in a cafe in Amsterdam, thinking how incredibly amazing this is, and not even looking it on the horizon. And now it's pretty available in a lot of the major cities, especially medically. I know that this pathway has been carved out, and if we all bind together, we can speed this up and get people what they need in society right now. Yeah. I think that's
the opportunity here. And I think one thing I just want to tease out there that I think is going to be incredible for cannabis and also for the psychedelic community is that the future of psychedelics, the future of medicine, is frequency. And so as we talk about this, the future is now, and the opportunity exists where instead of in the future, if you need vitamin C, instead of eating an orange, you're just going to basically put on some headphones, get the frequency of vitamin C, and it's going to cause an electrical reaction in the brain, a chemical reaction in the body, and you're going to get the benefit of that vitamin C without ever having taken the vitamin C physically. And what's important about this is that the opportunity already exists with psychedelics where you, instead of taking a organic compound, whether that's psilocybin mushrooms or ketamine or anything else, if you are delivered the frequency of that compound, that you will get the benefit. Your body will recognize the benefit. And a company that we're working with right now to create these psychedelic patches. We have a ketamine patch that we've already perfected. It's a wearable patch. Warren's got one on.
I have it on. Yeah.
Nice. And these patches have no ketamine in the patch. It's basically the frequency of ketamine. They've cloned the frequency of the ketamine, and then they put it onto the crystals in the patch. And like a battery, it holds the charge. And when you put it on your skin, it starts to radiate, and you start to get the equivalent of a microdose of ketamine. If prohibition happens, or you're somewhere where you can't access this, they're never going to be able to make a frequency illegal. And this is the equalizer. This technology is the future. And we have to get really aggressive right now because, people need these things, and we can't wait around like we did with cannabis, even though, like Warren said, it's a beautiful thing that's happened over the last, 10 years where, cannabis is very accessible in the United States. It's not accessible like it needs to be. And that's the difference. And I think anybody watching this, if you can come up with, ways that you can become more radical or make more videos like Warren and I, getting celebrities involved, writing a letter in the New York Times. I saw somebody the other day, a group went to the Joe Biden's house and put a letter in his mailbox about iboga and said, hey, you need to make this legal. So it's happening. I know everybody has their own, unique resources and opportunities to do this, but I think we can't sit back here. And when I hear people, still talking with, city agencies and governments and this government organization, I feel bad, because they're not accepting the reality that they have the masses, that they have the, they have the numbers. It's a majority, and we just have to take what the majority of people want and not sit by and listen to, outdated, 50-year-old legislation and, 80-year-old politicians tell us what they think about their knowledge of plant medicine is. We're beyond that, and we're in a crisis. So it's time to step up, do whatever you can, get radical, because you can make a difference. You really can be that tipping point right now. Anybody watching this could be that single tipping point moment where they push this over the top, and then everybody gets to access these medicines. I can imagine a time in the future when a baby's born and they immediately give them some CBD instead of a bunch of this other stuff that they inject you with when you're born. So we have to bring that reality about right now. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah, I'm just happy to be in front of an audience that has brought so much progress again in cannabis, and hope, ask for your participation here. We have the Mind Army. You can visit at mindarmy.org. We're working hard to build up the funds to go directly to Washington to hire lobbying firms and try to get in front of the president, try to get in front of the decision makers, and go about this in the most direct way. As Zappy said, the rates of suicide are off the charts. In January, we were in a crisis. The numbers that are coming out, during this pandemic and during the quarantine have been very tough to digest. The CDC came out with a statistic that 1 in 4 people between the ages of 18 and 24 has contemplated suicide over these last 6 months. The traditional paradigm of treating these things led us into the crisis we were in January. We cannot fall back on that paradigm of treatment because, we're running towards a cliff. Zappy and I, we know the solution exists out there. We know what works. It's just very difficult to push this through the bureaucracy without the help of a lot of people. This needs to be a mass movement. We need all of the people that understand this information to join up, to link up, get together, cooperate, and help us push this through on a national level, not city by city, not county by county. You're in one county, you can have access to this life-saving medicine, and one county over, it's illegal and you'll go to jail for the rest of your life. I mean, this is America. These are our bodies. This is unlocking our mind. I mean, the state is getting in between us and our minds and our bodies, and it's an outdated concept. It doesn't work in society. We need a change right now, given where we are. It's very obvious, with these multiple crises going on. Something has to change. I think people in the cannabis space understand there's a world out there of medicine that works much better than, what your typical psychiatrist would give you. And let's get it available to the people. Let's get it studied. Let's get it administered as safely as possible. Let's get doctors trained. I mean, that's a runway in and of itself. We have to start now. So please come to themindarmy.org. Help. If you have other resources, not just financially, other ideas, we're very open to talking to people. We'd love to have you guys join.
Yeah, please join us, because again, we're not going to sit here in 2020 and listen to somebody tell us that, okay, alcohol's good, tobacco's good, but somehow cannabis and psilocybin are bad. And even if you're in a crisis and you're addicted or depressed or you're going to kill yourself, you cannot access these things. They're off the table because 54 years ago, we made them illegal to study them for safety. Well, no, it's 54 years later. Millions of people have used it, many with great benefit. And we're just not going to sit around and listen to a conversation about one thing's good and one thing's bad from people who have no idea what they're talking about. So we all understand basic science and medicine at this point. These things are important and they need to come out. So if you can get radical, if you can join us, the Mind Army, what we're doing there is not only to lobby politicians and the presidents, but also to create a task force to do harm reduction, because there are psychedelic societies in every single city in this country. And if those people could rise to the top, rise up above the sort of taboo level that we're at now and be public, then if somebody's having a bad experience, a bad trip, they need help integrating, there's people in every city that can help. We just have to bring this forward. And secondly, we're putting out a microdosing handbook, which is, if the president signs this executive order tomorrow, we want people to be in a position where if they encounter some of these compounds, they can do it safely and effectively. And we think that's by starting with the microdosing. So we're putting together this Mind Army microdosing handbook to show people, here's what mushrooms are about, here's how you microdose it, these are the general effects, and have that information available. It's really important information. And again, cannabis, this could be debated, but there's no debate in my mind. Cannabis is a psychedelic. It's a powerful psychedelic. It's just a very subtle one. And so we have to be able to use these compounds. It's almost 2021 right now, and we're just not going to sit here and let 50-year-old legislation sit there and block people and have them kill themselves. So let's get aggressive. Join us at themindarmy.org. Be part of this and do the same for cannabis. Get radical. I've seen, Warren and I, during some of these voter drives and things, there were opportunities there to be, really, challenging and just come up with over-the-top ways to make this message heard. And I think, the tendency has been to be with cannabis, to think, oh, well, you know, we're on the 1 yard line. We just got to push it over. We're so close. Let's not make any waves. Let's just keep pushing with everybody, local, state, federal. And that's not going to work. You're going to be on the 1 yard line forever. And we have to get radical. We are a majority and we have the best product in the world. Let's not wait. So let's do this right now. Thank you.